The forest was quiet that morning. A thin layer of fog rolled across the valley, hiding the tall pine trees like ghosts. The sound of an axe echoed again and again as a giant man worked alone near the river. His name was Evan Cross, a lumberjack who lived far from the towns, far from people. He liked silence. He liked the rhythm of wood breaking under his swing. Evan was not cruel, but life had made him rough. He had lost many things: friends, family, and faith in people. The forest became his only companion. It never lied. It never asked for anything. Every day he worked, chopped, and carried wood back to his small cabin by the stream. But that morning was different. As he lifted his axe for another swing, he heard something strange. It wasn't an animal or the cry of the wind. It was a faint, trembling sound, like children crying. He froze, his hand gripping the handle tighter. The sound came again, soft and broken, carried by the mist. Evan followed the noise through the trees. His heavy boots crushed the wet leaves underfoot. The deeper he went, the colder it became. The air felt strange, almost charged. When he reached the edge of the river, he stopped. There, beside the rocks, were two small figures, curled up and shaking. They were not human. Their skin shimmered pale blue under the weak sunlight. Their eyes glowed faintly like stars trapped in tears. They wore thin, torn clothes made of a fabric Evan had never seen. The older one tried to stand, putting herself in front of the smaller one. Her tiny hands shook as she held up a broken metal piece that looked like a part of a ship. Evan's breath caught in his chest. He had seen strange things in the sky before. Lights moving too fast, thunder without storms. But never something like this. Two alien children, scared and alone, in his forest. He took a careful step forward. The older child flinched, shielding her brother. Evan lowered his axe slowly and placed it on the ground. Then he knelt, keeping his hands open so they could see he meant no harm. "Hey," he whispered softly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The twins stared at him, not understanding the words, but the tone reached them. The smaller one whimpered, pressing closer to his sister. Evan noticed bruises on their arms, dust on their faces, and a long burn mark across the boy's leg. His heart tightened. For a long moment, none of them moved. The forest was silent except for the faint sound of water. Finally, the older one tilted her head, eyes full of fear yet curious. Evan slowly removed his jacket. It was big and warm. He wrapped it around both of them carefully. The boy sneezed, and the girl looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "Yeah," he murmured, smiling a little. "You're freezing. Let's get you warm." He lifted the smaller twin gently into his arms. They were light as feathers. The girl followed, holding the corner of his sleeve tightly. As they walked back through the forest, the mist began to clear, revealing the morning sun. Evan didn't know what he was doing. He only knew that leaving them there felt wrong. He had once believed kindness was a weakness, but now, carrying two trembling beings from the stars, he felt something alive inside him again. When they reached the cabin, the twins looked around with wide eyes. Evan set them near the fire, giving them a blanket and a mug of warm soup. They didn't eat right away. They only stared at the flames, whispering to each other in a strange melodic language. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. The forest seemed to whisper warnings. Evan looked toward the direction where he had found them. He saw a faint light flashing between the trees, almost hidden by the fog. Something had crashed there, something not of this world. He frowned and glanced at the twins. The girl was now watching him closely. As if sensing his thoughts, she pointed toward the forest, and then shook her head quickly. Her eyes filled with silent fear. Evan nodded slowly, understanding enough. Whatever was out there, it wasn't safe. As night began to fall, he added more wood to the fire. The twins huddled together under his jacket. The boy's eyes slowly closed. The girl whispered a soft word that sounded like, "Thank you," though it wasn't English. Evan leaned against the wall, staring into the flames. He felt something new. A connection, fragile but real. Above the cabin, unseen by any of them, a faint blue light flickered in the sky. A signal was sent far beyond the stars. And in that silent moment, humanity had already begun to speak a new kind of language, one built not on power, but on kindness. The night was long and heavy. Wind brushed against the wooden walls, carrying the smell of rain and pine. Inside the small cabin, the fire burned softly, painting warm light across the twins' blue faces. Evan watched them from his chair. The two tiny aliens slept close together, wrapped in his jacket like kittens hiding from the storm. He didn't understand why he cared. He had spent years avoiding people, avoiding feelings. Yet here he was, protecting creatures from another world. Their small hands, their scared eyes. It all reminded him of something he had buried deep, the part of himself that used to believe in helping others. When morning came, the forest was silent again. Only the sound of birds returned. Evan stepped outside to fetch water from the stream. His breath froze when he noticed a trail of burnt grass near the tree line. The soil was dark, and strange metallic dust shimmered in the sunlight. He knelt down, rubbing the particles between his fingers. It was warm. Too warm. Something had definitely crashed nearby. But it wasn't just a shipwreck. The ground carried energy, like it was still alive. He followed the marks for a few meters and stopped. His eyes caught something half buried under the dirt. A silver plate with strange writing on it, smooth and glowing faintly. He picked it up, and the glow pulsed once, like a heartbeat, before fading. He returned to the cabin with the object in his hand. The twins were awake now, sitting by the fire. The girl looked up sharply when she saw what he was holding. Her eyes widened, and she spoke quickly in her soft alien tongue. Evan stepped closer and laid the plate on the table. "Is this yours?" he asked quietly. The girl, Lyra, nodded slowly. She pointed toward the window, then pressed her hand over her heart. Evan understood. She wanted to go back. She wanted to find their ship, but fear shadowed her face. Evan crouched beside her. "You can't go now," he said gently. "There's danger out there." The boy, Neo, tilted his head curiously, trying to mimic his words. "Danger?" he repeated in a broken accent. Evan smiled faintly. "Yeah, danger." For the next few days, the forest remained quiet. Evan taught them simple words: food, fire, safe, and sleep. In return, they showed him symbols drawn with ashes on the floor, a circle of stars, a tall spire, and a glowing hand reaching out. It was their world. He listened, even if he couldn't understand, because the way they spoke made him feel like he was hearing the stories of the stars themselves. But peace never lasts long. One evening, when Evan stepped outside to chop firewood, he felt something strange. The air vibrated, low and steady, like the hum of machinery. He looked toward the ridge and froze. A blue beam of light blinked once, twice, through the trees. It wasn't lightning. It was a signal. Someone, or something, was searching. Evan rushed back inside. His heart pounded. The twins looked up immediately. Lyra's expression changed to pure fear. She whispered a word that sounded like hunters, then grabbed Neo's hand tightly. He shut the windows, threw more wood into the fire, and picked up his axe. "Stay here," he said firmly. But they shook their heads, clinging to him. He sighed and looked at them both. "All right, we stick together." The sound outside grew louder. A faint humming filled the air, mixed with a crackling static. Evan peeked through the window. In the distance, among the trees, small red lights flickered. Eyes of metal drones sweeping through the forest, searching for heat and movement. He knew he couldn't fight machines, not with an axe. He turned back to the twins. "We have to hide," he whispered, grabbing his lantern. They followed him silently through the back door into the night. The fog was thick, and the cold bit into their skin. They moved through the trees until they reached an old wooden shed by the stream. Evan opened the door, covered in moss and dust, and pushed them inside. "Stay here and don't make a sound," he whispered. Lyra nodded, pulling Neo close. He stepped outside again, gripping his axe tightly. The red lights were closer now. He could hear the hum of metal wings cutting the air. One of the drones hovered near his cabin, scanning the area. A bright cone of light swept across the walls. Evan picked up a rock and threw it hard toward the other side of the forest. The sound made the drone shift direction, giving him a few seconds. He returned to the shed, closing the door softly. The twins looked up at him with wide eyes. "We'll be okay," he said, breathing heavily. "We'll figure this out." Outside, the drones moved on, fading into the fog, but deep inside, Evan knew this was only the beginning. Something had found the signal from their crash, and whatever came next would not stop until it got what it wanted. As he looked down at the sleeping twins that night, he realized something terrifying. He was no longer just a lumberjack. He was now a guardian, standing between humanity and the unknown, between fear and kindness. The sun rose slowly through the mist, touching the forest with weak light. Evan hadn't slept all night. Every sound outside made him flinch. The twins lay near the hearth, curled together under his old blanket, safe for now. But he knew the peace wouldn't last. He stepped outside to gather firewood. The air felt heavier than before, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Birds avoided the clearing. Even the river ran quieter. When he reached the edge of the trees, his eyes caught something flickering among the ferns. A small, pulsing blue light. He knelt down and brushed away the wet leaves. Beneath them was a strange metal sphere, no bigger than his hand. It hummed faintly, sending ripples through the puddles nearby. As he touched it, the light grew brighter, flashing in rhythmic pulses like a heartbeat. Evan frowned. "You again," he muttered. He had seen similar metal before. The broken plate from the crash. This one was still alive, still sending something, a signal. He carried it back carefully to the cabin. The twins looked up as he entered. Lyra's eyes widened instantly. "No," she shouted, rushing forward. She grabbed the sphere and held it close, whispering fast words in her alien language. Evan froze, watching the light blink faster in her hands. Then she turned to him, her face pale. "Bad," she said, tapping her chest. "Call them." She pointed to the sky, her voice trembling. "They come." Evan understood just enough to feel his stomach tighten. The sphere was calling something. Maybe rescuers, maybe hunters. Either way, danger. "Can we stop it?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded slowly, pressing her hands over the orb. The blue glow dimmed a little, but didn't die. That night, the wind rose again, carrying distant echoes. Evan stood outside the cabin, axe in hand, staring toward the dark horizon. A faint hum trembled in the air, low and constant. Somewhere out there, something was answering the signal. Hours passed, and just before dawn, he saw it, a faint blue streak across the sky, slicing through clouds. It wasn't a star, it was a ship, moving slow, scanning the forest below. Its light swept across the valley, searching. Evan's pulse raced. He rushed back inside. "We have to move," he said quickly. The twins didn't understand his words, but they felt his urgency. They grabbed their small bag of scraps and followed him. He led them into the woods, moving fast between trees. The sound above grew louder, branches shaking from the vibration. He found an old tunnel entrance hidden under moss and roots. It used to be part of an abandoned mine. He pushed aside the rocks. "In here," he whispered. The twins crawled inside first. Evan followed, sealing the entrance with loose branches. Inside it was dark, damp, and cold, but it was safe for now. They sat together in silence, listening to the low rumble in the sky. After what felt like hours, the noise faded. Evan let out a long breath. The twins looked up at him, eyes wide with fear. "They go?" Neo asked softly, his voice still unsure. Evan nodded, "For now." But deep down, he knew they'd be back. As they sat there in the dim light of the lantern, Evan realized the twins were not just lost. They were being hunted, and that meant the hunters wouldn't stop until they found them. Lyra reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal, glowing faintly green. She pressed it into Evan's hand. "Safe," she said quietly. "You help, we hide." He closed his fist around it, feeling a strange warmth spread through his palm. When they finally left the tunnel, the forest was eerily still. Smoke drifted faintly in the distance where the ship had scanned. Trees were scorched in long straight lines. Evan clenched his jaw. "They're burning the woods to find you," he said under his breath. The twins looked guilty, as if they understood his tone even without the words. Evan shook his head. "Not your fault," he said. "We'll figure something out." As evening fell, he set up traps and covered the trail with leaves. He taught the twins how to stay quiet, how to listen for the unnatural hum of machines. That night, as they sat near the fire again, the boy Neo pointed at the sky. "Home," he whispered softly. Evan followed his gaze, seeing stars flicker faintly through the mist. "You'll go home one day," he said gently. "But until then, you've got me." Outside, somewhere far above the forest, unseen by their eyes, a cold voice echoed through a metal command deck. "Signal confirmed. 2 life signatures detected. Send the ground units." And deep in the woods, the faint hum returned, louder this time, coming closer. Evan didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire, sharpening his axe, waiting. The stars above blinked like eyes of distant watchers, and the forest prepared for what was coming. Because kindness had spoken once, but fear was about to answer. The forest woke to a strange light. It wasn't sunrise. It was colder, bluer, wrong. Evan opened his eyes to find the cabin glowing faintly from the seams of the wooden walls. He rushed to the window, heart pounding, and saw it. A massive shadow hovering above the trees, silent but heavy, like the sky itself was watching. A huge alien craft had descended beyond the ridge. Its underside flickered with patterns of white and blue, scanning the ground. The sound was deep, vibrating through his bones. The twins woke up in terror, clinging to each other. Lyra whispered something fast in her language, her voice trembling. Evan didn't need translation. He knew what it meant. They found us. He moved quickly, throwing supplies into a small bag. Water, bread, a lantern, and the crystal the girl had given him. "We can't stay here," he said firmly. Even though the twins couldn't understand, he motioned toward the back door, pointing toward the mountains. Outside, the forest no longer felt alive. Birds fled, and the air shimmered with heat as blue searchlights cut through the fog. Evan led them through the trees, each step careful but urgent. Behind them, a sharp crack split the air, followed by a flash of light. Their cabin exploded in flames. The twins gasped, eyes wide. The home that had kept them safe was gone in seconds. Evan turned his face away from the heat, his jaw tight. "Keep moving," he whispered. His boots sank into wet moss as they climbed uphill, the glow of the burning cabin fading behind them. After half an hour, they reached a narrow cave hidden between cliffs. Evan helped the twins crawl inside first. "Stay low," he whispered. The cave was cold, dark, and smelled of earth, but it would have to do. He knelt near the entrance, watching the sky through the gap in the rocks. Then, he saw them, shapes moving through the smoke, tall metallic figures with glowing lines on their armor. Their footsteps didn't make sound. They glided, scanning the forest with rods that sent out red waves of light. Evan counted 6, maybe 7. They were methodical, sweeping every inch of ground. He backed deeper into the cave and placed his finger over his lips. The twins nodded silently. Lyra held Neo close, their small bodies shaking. Hours passed. The forest burned in patches, ashes falling like snow. Evan tried to stay calm, but his hands wouldn't stop trembling. He had fought storms and wild animals before, but this was something far beyond anything human. Then, one of the soldiers stopped near the entrance of the cave. Its visor glowed red, scanning the rocks. Evan's breath caught. He grabbed his axe, ready to strike if it came closer. The machine paused, tilted its head, and moved on. When it was finally gone, he let out a shaky breath. He turned toward the twins, whispering, "We can't hide forever." Lyra looked at him with tired eyes. She touched the crystal he carried and whispered one word, "Home." He shook his head. "We'll find a way." Night fell again, but there was no peace. The air was thick with smoke, and the hum of engines above never stopped. The alien craft hovered like a ghost moon. Evan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the cabin burning. At dawn, the ground shook. Something heavy landed not far from the cave. Evan crawled outside carefully. He saw a smaller ship, a landing pod. Open like a flower, from it stepped 3 figures in armor, taller and sharper than the scouts. One of them raised a hand, and a beam shot across the trees, cutting down an entire trunk. Evan's heart hammered. He turned back to the twins. "We have to go now." They followed him out the back of the cave, deeper into the forest, toward the cliffs. The air was filled with ash and light. He carried Neo on his shoulders and held Lyra's hand as they ran, branches whipping against his arms. Then came the sound he feared most, a piercing metallic cry that echoed through the valley. The hunters had found their trail. Evan reached a fallen tree and shoved the twins under it. "Don't move," he whispered. He stood tall, gripping his axe. The forest around him glowed faint blue from the approaching drones. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a hero, but at that moment, standing in front of 2 helpless children from another world, he knew what he had to become. The first drone appeared between the trees. Its lights scanned his face. Evan didn't wait. He charged, swinging his axe with all his strength. The blade crashed into the metal neck. Sparks exploded into the fog. The machine fell, twitching, but more lights appeared behind it. Evan turned back once, saw the twins' terrified faces, and shouted, "Run when I tell you." His voice echoed through the forest. The next drone fired. A beam of blue light seared past him, burning a tree in half. He rolled aside, grabbed his axe again, and threw it with all his might. The weapon struck the second drone's core, shattering it in a burst of light. Smoke filled the air. The twins screamed his name in their broken voice. "Eva! Eva!" But the noise of engines drowned everything. He ran back toward them, grabbed both, and fled into the dark forest, his chest burning. Behind them, explosions lit up the sky. The alien ship roared like a thunderstorm, searching, hunting. But for the first time in years, Evan didn't feel fear. He felt alive. He had something to protect, something worth fighting for. And as the three figures disappeared into the shadowed woods, the stars above flickered. As if watching a story no galaxy could forget, the forest burned in the distance. Smoke crawled through the trees, painting everything in silver and shadow. Evan and the twins had run for hours, until their legs ached and lungs stung. They finally stopped inside a dry ravine, hidden beneath old roots and moss. Evan leaned against a rock, breathing hard. He could hear the hum of machines above. Drones moved like silent predators across the sky. He looked at the twins. Lyra held Neo close. Their faces streaked with dirt and tears. He forced a smile. "It's all right, little ones," he said quietly. "They'll have to go through me first." He knew he couldn't keep running forever. The forest was too open, too exposed. The hunters would find them eventually. He looked at the fallen trees and the jagged rocks surrounding them. An idea sparked inside him. It wasn't much, but it was something. While the twins rested, Evan began working. He gathered branches, stones, and pieces of old metal scattered from the crash. He built traps, pits covered with leaves, spears made from sharpened logs, and tripwires made of rope and vines. His rough hands moved quickly, every motion filled with purpose. Lyra watched him silently. Her glowing eyes reflected the firelight. She didn't understand his words, but she understood his intent. Neo handed him small tools from the wreckage, tiny glowing shards that hummed softly when touched. Evan smiled at him. "Good teamwork," he said, patting the boy's shoulder. By nightfall, the forest looked peaceful again, but beneath the calm, it was ready. Evan sat beside the twins near the small campfire. His axe rested across his knees. He stared at the flames, thinking about his old life. How he used to swing that same axe for money, for work, not for lives. Now it meant something. When the first sound came, he was ready. A faint metallic whisper carried by the wind, the hum of engines closing in. He put out the fire and whispered, "Stay quiet, no matter what." The twins nodded, fear trembling in their small frames. The night exploded into light. Blue beams sliced through the trees. The air cracked with the sound of plasma and burning wood. Evan crouched low, heart steady. The first soldier stepped into the clearing, a tall armored figure glowing with white veins of energy. Evan waited until it crossed the rope. Then he pulled. A heavy log swung down from the trees, smashing into the soldier's chest. Metal screamed against wood. The machine staggered, and Evan charged. His axe came down with a roar. Sparks burst into the dark. The impact threw him back, but the soldier fell, twitching. Evan's arm throbbed with pain. He grabbed the axe again. The forest lit with more approaching lights. There were too many, but retreat was no longer an option. He stood tall, eyes burning with fierce determination. "You're not taking them," he growled. The next wave came. Drones buzzed above, firing beams that burned through the branches. Evan dodged, rolled, and threw his axe again, hitting one midair. It crashed in a shower of sparks. Behind him, Lyra held Neo close, whispering in fear. But when one of the soldiers came too close, she lifted her small hands. The crystal on her neck glowed bright green. A shockwave burst from her palms, knocking the soldier backward. The beam carved a crater in the dirt. Evan turned in shock. "You can fight?" he said. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Only once," she whispered, her voice trembling. The forest blazed with light and sound. Evan fought like a storm, every swing of his axe cutting through the fog. His body burned with exhaustion, But he didn't stop. Each time a machine fell, more replaced it. Finally, a beam struck the ground near him, throwing him off his feet. His back hit the dirt, pain exploding through his ribs. He tried to stand, but his strength faltered. One of the soldiers stepped forward, weapon raised. Lyra screamed, running to him. Neo followed, clutching the green crystal. In that moment, the light from the crystal burst brighter than ever before. It surrounded all three of them in a shimmering field. The beam from the soldier hit it, but instead of burning, it reflected, striking the machine itself. The explosion tore through the trees. Silence followed. When the dust settled, the forest was dark again. The soldiers were gone. Only the faint glow of the crystal remained. Evan sat on the ground, holding the twins close. His chest rose and fell slowly. "We made it," he whispered, but deep inside, he knew this wasn't over. The hunters would come again, stronger, faster. Still, in that quiet moment under the stars, he looked at the two small aliens resting in his arms and smiled. "If they want you," he said softly, "they'll have to go through me every single time." Above the forest, hidden behind the clouds, the great ship watched, silent and unmoving. The hunters had failed, but another presence had seen the fight, one that didn't come for capture, but for understanding. And for the first time since the crash, the galaxy began to whisper about a human, a giant of the woods, who stood alone against the unknown, simply because his heart refused to turn away. The smoke had faded, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the battle itself. Evan sat on the ground with his back against a fallen tree, his chest rising slowly. His arms were scratched, his shirt torn, but his eyes stayed open, watching the faint glow of dawn between the trees. The twins slept beside him, wrapped in his jacket. Their faces looked peaceful again, soft and innocent. Evan smiled weakly. He had survived storms, loneliness, and pain, but protecting these two had shown him a kind of strength he never knew existed. But peace in this forest never lasted long. A sound broke through the silence, low and deep, like thunder rolling from the sky. Evan looked up, and his heart sank. Through the mist, a much larger ship descended, smoother and darker than the one before. It moved slowly, silently, as if it already knew where to find them. He stood up, his axe in hand. His whole body ached, but he was ready. "Stay behind me," he told the twins softly. Lyra woke first, her eyes wide. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just held her brother close and whispered one word, "Mother." Evan froze. "What did you say?" he asked, but she was already looking toward the ship, tears welling in her glowing eyes. The ship landed softly in the clearing. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, and from its side, a door opened, light spilled out, and a tall figure stepped forward. She wasn't like the others. Her armor shimmered silver instead of blue, and her face, though alien, held calmness, wisdom, and sorrow. Her eyes glowed the same gentle color as the twins. The children ran toward her, shouting in their melodic language. Evan's heart pounded. He wanted to stop them, but then he saw the way the woman fell to her knees and embraced them, pulling them into her arms. Her trembling hands touched their faces as if afraid they might disappear. He lowered his axe slowly. The truth hit him. It wasn't an enemy. It was their mother. She looked up at him, her gaze soft but heavy with emotion. She spoke a few words in her language, then pressed a small device on her wrist. Her voice shifted, now echoing in English. "You protected them." Evan didn't move. His throat tightened. "They needed help," he said quietly. "That's all." The alien woman rose, standing taller than him. Her armor shimmered like starlight as she looked around at the wreckage, the broken drones, the scorched earth. "You fought my soldiers," she said softly. "You stood alone." "They were trying to take the kids," Evan replied. "I don't care what planet they came from. Nobody hurts children." For a moment, silence hung between them. The wind whispered through the burnt trees. The twins held their mother's hands but kept looking back at Evan, their small faces torn between love and loyalty. Finally, the woman stepped closer. "Our signal brought hunters," she explained. "They were not my people. They came for power, not rescue. I followed the trail before they could destroy everything." She looked down, her voice trembling. "If not for you, they would be gone." Evan didn't know what to say. He just nodded slowly. "Guess we both had bad mornings," he muttered. She smiled faintly, a small, tired smile that made her alien face seem almost human. Then she reached out and opened her hand. In her palm lay a crystal, identical to the one Lyra had given him, but brighter, glowing with gentle light. "This belongs to you now," she said. "It is a memory stone. It will remember what happened here. It will remember you." He stared at it, the glow reflecting in his tired eyes. "What am I supposed to do with it?" he asked. "Keep it," she said softly. "Someday, when you look at the stars, it will answer you." Behind her, the ship hummed to life. The twins held her hands, ready to go. But before stepping aboard, they broke free and ran back to Evan. Lyra hugged his leg tightly. Neo reached up, pressing his small blue palm to Evan's chest. "Home safe," the boy said, his words clumsy but clear. Evan's throat burned. He placed his rough hand over the boy's. "Yeah," he whispered. "You're home safe now." The twins stepped back, their eyes wet. The woman gave a nod of gratitude and led them into the ship. Lights surrounded them, soft and bright. The engines lifted silently, the ground trembling under the power. Evan watched as the ship rose through the mist, cutting through the clouds, until it vanished into the endless morning sky, leaving behind only the sound of the wind. He stood there alone for a long time, the glowing crystal warm in his hand. The forest smelled of smoke and new rain. He felt tired but at peace. For the first time in years, he smiled. A real, quiet smile. Somewhere above the clouds, among countless stars, two small voices whispered his name. And the galaxy remembered the human lumberjack who chose kindness over fear. Days turned into weeks, and the forest began to heal. The burnt trees stood like silent scars among new green leaves. Rain washed away the ash, and the sound of the river returned. But the cabin, the place where it all began, was gone. Only a circle of blackened earth and broken stone remained. Evan rebuilt slowly, not because he wanted comfort, but because he needed purpose. He gathered wood, shaped logs, and raised new walls. Each swing of his axe felt lighter, not driven by duty, but by memory. The memory of two glowing children who had trusted him with their lives. Every night, he sat by the fireplace. The crystal the alien mother had given him rested on the mantle, glowing faintly blue. Sometimes, when the wind was still, it pulsed softly, like a heartbeat answering his own. At first, he thought it was imagination, but one night, as the moon climbed high, the light from the crystal shimmered across the cabin, and a faint image appeared above it. Two tiny figures, Lyra and Neo, smiling, waving. Their laughter echoed softly, not from this world, but from across the stars. Evan's eyes filled with tears. He chuckled quietly. "You're really out there," he whispered. "Guess I'm not as alone as I thought." The world outside never knew what happened in that forest. To them, it was just another storm, another strange light in the sky. But to Evan, it was the moment he found his soul again. One morning, months later, a small ship descended near the clearing, sleek, silver, and silent. It left no fire or sound, only a soft hum that felt familiar. A message blinked on its side, glowing in English, "For the protector of the lost." The door opened, but no one stepped out. Instead, a simple wooden crate lowered gently onto the grass. Inside was a new axe, its handle carved with alien runes, the blade forged of a silver metal that shimmered under sunlight. Evan lifted it slowly, feeling its weight. On the handle, in perfect English, were engraved 4 words: "Kindness is stronger than fear." He stood there for a long moment, looking at the words, then raised the axe toward the sky in silent salute. Somewhere above the clouds, he knew someone was watching. The ship lifted away without noise, vanishing into the light. Evan walked back to his cabin, the new axe resting on his shoulder. The forest around him glowed green again, peaceful, alive. At night, he placed the axe beside the old crystal. The glow of both merged together, blue and silver, dancing across the walls. He leaned back in his chair, smiling softly. His life was quiet again, but no longer empty. Sometimes travelers passed by the edge of the forest and spoke of a giant man who lived alone among the trees. They said he guarded something ancient, something powerful. Some claimed they saw a blue light in his window at night, flickering like a star trapped in glass. But Evan never explained. He just smiled and offered them food. His eyes held stories no human words could tell. And when he was alone, he would look up at the night sky, whispering their names, Lyra, Neo. The crystal would pulse in reply, faint but warm. Years passed, and legends began. People spoke of the lumberjack of the stars, the man who faced the unknown and chose compassion over fear. They said that when storms rolled through the valley and thunder shook the trees, a faint blue light always flickered above the forest, reminding the world that one man's kindness once changed the course of galaxies. Evan grew older, his beard turning white, his hands rough as bark, but every time he looked at the crystal, he felt the same peace, the same warmth. And on one quiet night, as the wind whispered through the pines, the crystal shone brighter than ever before, filling the cabin with light. Evan smiled, leaned back, and closed his eyes. The light wrapped around him like a soft blanket. Somewhere beyond the stars, two voices called his name, welcoming him home. And the forest, forever touched by his heart, glowed beneath a sky full of silver stars.